Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer, and today we're here for yet another Civilization 6 Leader Spotlight, where today we'll be taking a look at John Curtin of Australia. So John Curtin's first ability is known as Citadel of Civilization, and what it does is it makes it so that he receives plus 100% production if either he has received a declaration of war in the past 10 turns, or if he has liberated a city in the past 10 turns. So Citadel of Civilization is just an incredibly strong ability because, you're just going to be getting double production for any of those things. I don't find it to be particularly useful with liberating a city. However, if you are able to liberate a city, I would highly recommend doing that, just because that gives you double production for 20 turns, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But having war declared on you, giving you double production for 10 turns is really nice because it makes it easier to defend yourself. If maybe that war is a surprise, you can produce some units real fast because you'll be able to build all of your units in half the usual time because you'll be getting double production. You could use this strategically to kind of help you get a wonder or to help get you more buildings. So what you can do is you can just be a jerk to a bunch of other people and make them really dislike you, and then they'll eventually declare war on you, give you double production. And as long as you've been careful to make sure that you have enough military units to defend yourself, you'll pretty much just get double production for free. And then whenever you make peace with them after killing their army, you can get a bunch of gold out of that as well. So Citadel of Civilization as a whole is just a really strong ability. John Curtin's second ability is known as Land Down Under, and it makes it so that he receives +3 housing in all of his coastal cities. Pastures also trigger a culture bomb whenever you build them, and yields from campuses, commercial hubs, holy sites, and theater squares are +1 in tiles with charming appeal and +3 in tiles with breathtaking appeal. So Land Down Under is another really good ability. The +3 housing isn't particularly great. It should be noted that this does stack additionally with fresh water, so if you're able to settle coastally with a river nearby, then you will be getting the housing bonus from fresh water as well as this +3 as well. So that is super good. Pastures triggering a cultural bomb, once again, it's not really huge. That maybe can get you a few extra tiles, but it's not going to be too impactful. The big thing that makes Land Down Under really good, though, is the extra yields for campuses, commercial hubs, holy sites, and theater squares. So these are all based on appeal, and the big thing here that really works out is with campuses and holy sites, just because both of those districts would normally be getting adjacency bonuses from mountains, and mountains happen to provide additional appeal to the surrounding tiles as well. So you are able to get really good yields on campuses or holy sites, normally up to +5, all the way up to maybe +7 or +8 on some of those. So it could be incredibly strong with campuses and holy sites. It doesn't work out quite as well with commercial hubs and theater squares, just because you're not going to be generally placing those as close to mountains. Obviously, if you have mountains that are increasing the appeal of a tile that you then want to put one of those districts on one of those tiles, then it would be good. But for campuses and holy sites especially, this is just an incredibly strong ability that can get you a ton of extra yields. Moving on to Australia's unique unit, we have the Digger, which is a special unit that replaces the infantry. It has a melee strength of 72, which is up +2 from the infantry, a movement of 2, which is the same as the infantry, and a production cost of 430, which is also the same as the infantry. Has a few special abilities as well, so it gains +5 combat strength when not fighting in your territory, so that's anywhere outside your territory, whether that be neutral territory or enemy territory, and it also gains +10 combat strength when adjacent to coast. So overall, the Digger it has the potential to be really good. I mean, it is definitely just straight up better than infantry, there's absolutely no doubt about that, because if nothing else, you are going to be getting +2 combat strength, which isn't too big of a deal. It is really nice that this does have the same production cost as infantry as well. So just straight up, it is a little bit better than the infantry, but not outstanding. If you are able to get those extra combat boosts, though, so fighting outside your territory or on coast, then you can get up to 17 more combat strength than a normal infantry would have. So that is incredibly good. So situationally, the Digger can be an incredibly strong unit. It doesn't always work out that well that you are able to, be fighting on coast outside your territory. So that is a little bit of a shame, but overall the Digger is a fairly decent unit, and I would recommend using these aggressively whenever maybe you're going to attack someone navally, and then you can land the Diggers on their shores and try to take out maybe a few cities by doing that, because then you'll be on the coast, you'll be outside your territory, and that'll just kind of make full use of the Digger. So overall, a fairly decent unique unit. As far as Australia's unique tile improvement is concerned, we have the Outback Station, which is unlocked with the Guild Civic. The Outback Stations must be built on desert hills, grassland, or plains, and once you construct them, they will provide +1 production, +1 food, +0.5 housing, and +1 additional food for every adjacent pasture. They also are improved throughout the tech tree, so whenever you research steam power, you're going to be getting +1 production to every adjacent pasture, +1 production from every 2 adjacent Outback stations. So the big thing here is just that with that first ability, it provides production to the adjacent pastures. So pastures don't give production it gives production to pastures. Also, whenever you unlock rapid deployment, it will be gaining +1 food from every 2 adjacent Outback stations. So the Outback Station as a whole, I think, is a really, really strong tile improvement because it allows you to make a lot more use of tiles that you otherwise would not be able to make use of, namely desert and desert hills. So if you're settling near desert, and maybe if you have Petra as well, you can get some incredibly strong tiles on desert with Outback Stations and a Petra. But otherwise, if you don't have Petra in a city, you can still make decent use of those tiles if you just blob up a bunch of Outback Stations on them. Just because if you build them together in a really big clump, you'll be getting additional yields from having so many adjacent Outback Stations, and those tiles that otherwise would be pretty much dead will be made use of. So I would highly recommend building these in blobs as opposed to just dotting them around, just because of how many bonuses they get, because they get that extra production and extra food from having adjacent Outback Stations. So with that, you're able to make use of a lot more tiles. You can get a little bit more production, a little bit more food, a little bit more housing, and it's just very useful yield. So overall, the Outback Station, I think, is very good. And now it is that time to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of John Curtin and the Australians in Civilization 6. So for the first strength, I really do like how easily John Curtin can get good district yields. So this namely comes from his second ability that gives him additional yields on his campuses, theater squares, commercial hubs, and holy sites from having tiles with certain appeals. And this ends up working really well, especially as I've talked about with your campuses and your holy sites, because mountains will provide additional appeal to their surrounding tiles. Those 2 districts already are going to be getting adjacency from mountains, so that stacks up, and you can get some really easy +5, +6, +7 campuses or holy sites whenever you're playing John Curtin, and this can be incredibly useful, especially in the early game. It can set you so far ahead so early on. Also, you can use this for theater squares, because normally theater square adjacency is a little bit difficult to come by, but with this, it is just really easy. Same thing with commercial hubs. Normally, you're only going to be relying on getting the adjacency from having rivers nearby, but with this, with his ability, you're able to get a bit higher adjacency on it. So just with all of those districts, you can get some really, really good yields, and I think it is quite strong. The other big strength of John Curtin is that the Outback Station is a really, really useful improvement. As I've talked about, you can use that to make use of otherwise dead tiles, such as desert or desert hills. You can clump them together and just get a bunch of tiles that have really good yields in both production and food, so you can get a lot of big cities that also have good production, which is something that normally you wouldn't be able to get with mines. You normally either have to choose between having like a lot of food or a lot of production, because you can either build a lot of farms or build a lot of mines. But with the Outback Stations, you can kind of get a little bit of both. You can get a decent amount of food, decent amount of production, and then you'll have a ton of population, so you can just keep working more and more and more of those, provided you have housing that can support that population. But also, you do happen to be getting housing from your first ability as long as you're on coast, so it all just kind of works nicely together. So the Outback Station, a very nice improvement. As far as our weaknesses are concerned, one of the big ones is that he is a little bit reliant on getting war declared on you, and not everybody is totally comfortable with being at war like a lot of the time. So whenever you're playing John Curtin, you kind of want to be as much of a jerk to other people as you possibly can to get them to declare war on you, because getting double production from that is really, really helpful. But if you're someone that maybe you're not confident with your defense skills, or maybe someone else just has a really large military that you can't handle, then being such a jerk to other people and getting a bunch of people to declare war on you can be a little bit of a bad thing, and you can get overwhelmed sometimes. So that is definitely a weakness of Australia. The other one is that it's more of like a personal thing, but I am really just not a fan of settling coastally, and I think that there are some disadvantages to coastal settling. The big one just being that your cities are incredibly more vulnerable whenever you settle coastally, as opposed to maybe one tile away from the coast on like a river or something like that. So whenever you settle coastally, a lot of the times what happens is, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties like Immortal or Deity, is that either the barbarians or the AI will get to caravels really fast, and then your cities, even if they have walls, they'll just get killed in like 2 shots, or like 2 or 3 shots by a caravel, and it can just be absolutely devastating. So I really don't like to settle coastally, because I would much rather settle like 1 tile in from the coast. So that's just something that I really don't like, just because it's so much harder to defend. But I guess some people are probably more okay with settling on coast. The other thing with coast is that you do end up with a lot of dead tiles that you can't work, because you'll have a lot of either deep ocean or other coast tiles that you can't put improvements on, so that sucks. And it's just something I'm not a huge fan of. But once again, this is something that's more of a personal preference rather than anything else, so you can take that weakness with a little bit of a grain of salt. And now it is that time to give John Curtin and the Australians their tier rankings. So if you're new to the series, what I do is I give each leader a tier ranking in each of the 4 victory types, so domination, science, culture, and religion, and these rankings just kind of gauge the civilization's general proficiency at attaining either of the rankings. I give them an overall ranking as well, which takes into account other things such as their versatility, their spawn bias, their unique units, and that ranking just kind of pits them against the other leaders in the game and gives you an idea of where they fall amongst the other leaders in the game. All of our rankings go from S to F, with S being the highest and F being absolutely terrible. So let's go ahead and rank John Curtin. So domination's up first, and I think John Curtin is deserving of a B in domination. He doesn't really have that many outright bonuses towards domination, but you generally do want to go to war whenever you're playing as John Curtin, so you want to get people a little bit mad at you, so maybe declaring a few surprise wars, taking a little bit of territory, having some cities that are captured from other people just to get people mad at you is generally a good thing as John Curtin, because the more and more that people declare war on you, the better your life becomes, because you just get double production, which can then just help you progress incredibly fast. The other thing is, if war gets declared on you, then you're going to be getting that double production, which means that you can then produce a bunch of military units. You can use that to then stage a counterattack, and also, whenever you counterattack, so someone declares war on you, and then you go and maybe push back their army and then take one of their cities, the warmonger penalties are incredibly reduced, and I think a lot of the times you receive no warmonger penalty for that, so that is something that is really, really good, and it's a strategy I would definitely recommend with Australia. So just try to get people mad at you, try to get them to declare war on you, use the extra production to get a bunch of units, beat their army, counterattack, and then you'll have very little warmonger penalties, and you'll have some more land as well, and some more units. So overall, John Curtin is a fairly decent domination civ, and I think he's quite deserving of the B ranking. Science is up next, and I definitely think that John Curtin deserves an A in science, if for no other reason than just having those incredible yields on his campuses. So as I've talked about multiple times already, with his ability that gives extra yields based on tile appeal, that works incredibly well with the campus district, just because mountains normally will be providing extra appeal to the tiles that surround them. Campuses already receive adjacency from mountains, so combine the adjacency from the mountains with the additional yields from the tile appeal, and you can get some really, really good yields on your campuses, and that will just help propel you through the tech tree really quickly. The other thing is, you can use that extra production if maybe in the late game you're able to get someone to declare war on you. You can use that double production to then go and build a bunch of space parts. So overall, as a science civ, I think John Curtin is very, very strong. Culture is up next, and I think that John Curtin deserves a B in culture. He's a fairly competent cultural civ. He doesn't really have any bonuses to his tourism or anything of the sort, which is really just what you need to win a culture victory. But the nice thing is, you will be getting some extra yields to your theater squares, which can help push you through the civic tree. You can also use the double production to get yourself some key wonders, such as Cristo Redentor or the Eiffel Tower, or anything of the sort. You could also use that to then go ahead and put down some theater squares a little bit faster if you're getting double production. And as I've mentioned, you can get additional yields on theater squares, which sometimes yields on theater squares can be a little bit hard to come by, so just getting that little bit of extra culture is quite nice. It does suck that he doesn't get any bonuses like directly to tourism or his seaside resorts or national parks or anything of the sort, but even so, he is still slightly better than average at culture victory. Religion is up last, and I think that John Curtin actually deserves an A in religion, strictly because of, once again, just the yields that he's able to receive on his holy site. So much like with the campus that I've already talked about, you're going to be getting adjacency bonuses from mountains already with a holy site, and then the additional appeal is going to allow you to get even more yields on your holy sites. And really, when you're going for religion, pretty much the only thing you care about is straight faith output. And with John Curtin, if you're able to get a decent number of holy sites next to mountains, you can get just incredibly high faith outputs, and it just kind of works out well. That then you can spam missionaries, spam apostles, and go and convert other people to your religion. So that is just something that is incredibly good with John Curtin, is just the sheer amount of faith per turn that you can get from having his additional holy site yields. So for that reason, I think he is pretty good at a religious victory and quite deserving of the A tier ranking. And lastly, we have John Curtin's overall ranking, and I think that he is quite deserving of the A ranking in just overall. He is a very, very good Civ. He's a very good all-around Civ. He can pretty much do everything, at least fairly competently, just because of the skill set that he has. So he's able to get bonus yields on his districts to a lot of different things. You could use those bonus yields to either go science, you can go religion, you can go culture, you can use the extra production to go domination. Also, that extra production is tied to war, so generally you want to be warring people. You want to have people declaring war on you. You can then, build more units. You can counterattack. So every single victory type, John Curtin is fairly competent at, and that is something that not a lot of the other Civs in Civ 6 are able to say. So for that reason, he is just one of the better Civs in the game. He's fairly easy to play as well, and he really has just no huge downsides to him. So overall, a very strong Civ and very deserving of being in the A tier. So thank you everyone for watching. I have been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.